Well, we always love hearing people's stories of how they came to faith. So I'd love to invite Sam to come up. Sam and I have known each other a few years now. Our husbands were at Bible college together, so we had lots of fun. 20 years ago, I think it was now.
We nearly our silver anniversary, 25.
It's nearly our silver. Can you believe that, Sam? Don't tell them. Shall we sit down? Or would you rather stand?
No, sit. My legs are shaking.
Yeah,
so
let's sit down. Let's sit down. And Sam was a brilliant hairdresser back then. She cut my boy's hair.
It's self-taught. It was fake it till you said to me.
It was fake it. And then what I've always loved about Sam over the years is that if ever I want to know about a gadget, I just go to Sam's house because she's got it. She's always got the best gadgets. And if you want to know about Thermomixes, Sam's just got a Thermomix. They are awesome. But anyway, Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself growing up, where you grew up, what life was like.
Can you hear me? Yeah, great. So I grew up in Milton Keynes. I was one of the early kind of, when it was just brand new sort of city. My family is Irish, Catholic, so I grew up very much second generation in an Irish family and in an Irish kind of culture and community. So church, I guess, was and faith and spirituality was very much sort of part of my upbringing, but I hated it. It was not a positive experience for me. And it was, there was just some of the folk around at the time who weren't necessarily great models of that. So in terms of my own experience, it was a cultural thing rather than a kind of by conviction. My family was chaotic. And I felt very different from them. So from a very early age, I was absolutely convinced I was adopted, and I kept begging my parents to tell me that I was, but because I just felt so different from my family. It was very chaotic, and from a very, very young age, I felt that I needed to find control. I needed to find this. It's just fantastic what you've just covered, actually thinking about that confidence. I had none. I had no stability, and I wanted that. So it was on me to kind of make it, to find that. So for me, I became interested in supernatural. I hated the idea of God, really hated the idea of God. For me, God was like Father Christmas. It was a story. But I did think there was something bigger than me, but it was all about me trying to find that, to control it, to harness that. Sorry, my hands are shaking. So I became interested in the occult, I would say at about 5.
Okay. Wow.
I was an early reader, and so I read everything, and I was in a family that wasn't literate, and so I just got given everything I wanted to read. I was able to read. And I just got more and more involved in that and started to think about how I could, it was all about control. It was all about finding confidence, and it was all about finding that stability.
Wow. So when did you first hear about Jesus?
Well, as I say, sort of growing up in a kind of religious context, Jesus was there, but actually at school, our sort of religious education was about copying prayers from a board, and it was that. Yeah. So Jesus was something, wasn't very attractive. No. I mean, sort of Jesus, God was just, there was nothing there that I found even remotely appealing, because God and religion didn't give me any sense of direction. Yeah.
So what changed, Sam?
As I was saying, as I was quite young and very much involved in the occult, and that continued to grow, and I started to practice kind of witchcraft from quite early on in my primary school, and then into secondary school. And in Milton Keynes, I think they were, because it was a new town, and I think it was the first place to actually have a recognised kind of an official kind of place of worship for white witches, I guess.
Yeah.
So for those who are practicing that, and I contacted the local kind of coven to see if if I could join, if there'd be something there for me. But I was at a super liberal school that was very kind of experimental, and they let everybody in. So they would let the witches in, but they'd also let the Christians in. So it was all going on, which kind of which was
Amazing.
suited me, because at that point I was my aim. I even wrote a sort of manifesto of who I wanted to be and what I wanted my life to be like. So because I was trying to craft it myself. And I remember the Christians came and they did the presentation, but I knew that I didn't want to hear from them, because I was done with that. So I used to let the JWs in at home, and I used to go to a Mormon kind of youth group with a friend, and I was really interested in everybody, but not the Christians, because I knew what I thought about that. So at school, we had a team came over from Canada. They were sort of a mission team, and they came to do a presentation at school, and I asked my teacher if I could be excused from that, because I knew what I thought, and she said, well, go and do some homework then. And basically I was lazy, so I sat and listened to the Christians. And they really, what really was interesting, and I love the way God works in each of our lives so differently, was that they confused me. I couldn't get a handle on them. Now, I think in terms of where I was going in my life with the supernatural and the occult side of things, I could get a read on most people and figure stuff out, but I couldn't get a handle on couldn't get a read on the Christians. And that was the thing that intrigued me. I couldn't understand them. I didn't know what they were about. So they were meeting a school where church was based the following evening, and I think about 100 kids from my school went to go and hear them, and then they gave a gospel presentation, and there was just a moment of, they talked about the crowds when offered Jesus or Barabbas. They chose the guilty over the innocent without knowing the innocent. And I thought, that's exactly what I've done. I've decided I know what he's like, but I didn't know what he was like. And I've chosen the guilty, the over the innocent. I've rejected him without knowing him. And there was just a moment of, because I'd experienced a lot of things at that point, it was like they suddenly became insubstantial, and suddenly there was substance.
Wow.
And I didn't know quite what I was trusting or who I was trusting, but I knew I'd met God, and everything else suddenly felt very filmy.
How amazing. And so that was the beginning of your walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
Did your life change straight away? What was it like?
Oh, it was awful. It was tricky, because do you know, it's not easy, is it, to learn to trust and have our confidence in God, and it's not, I think it's quite a romantic idea, and it's not helpful to say, I think this has just been so brilliant, that God is the builder of everything, and the turning our eyes, the fixing our eyes is just it's a continual process. And when you have that rug pulled from underneath you, when the anchor that you've built your life on is false, is no anchor at all, for me, it was a really deeply uncomfortable position to be in, and I really struggled with it. So I knew that God was there, but I had yet to learn what it looks like to fix our eyes, fix our thoughts, our hearts and our minds. Kind of yet to learn to do that, but in His mercy, He used that time of I think it was about a couple of years of being deeply unsettled to do that reorientation.
Wow. And I'm sure that your younger self, what would they say about what you're doing now? Because you're married to Nick, he's a vicar in Hove, and doing something like this. What would your younger self make of it, really? Because your life has changed.
I mean, even my friends who at the time weren't Christians said of all of us, I was the one who was least likely to become a Christian.
Yeah.
So I would have been, I'd probably be furious actually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? To think where I am,
Yeah.
you know, kind of where I am now.
Yeah.
So it's odd, isn't it? But I think right back at the beginning, I think one of the earliest verses that God kind of captured my heart with was from Proverbs about, you know, not leaning on my own understanding.
Yeah.
And what was really helpful was when some very wise, you know, sort of church leaders said, you know, your mind is like a house with all the doors and windows open, because I let everything in, everything. I wanted to experience everything, apart from Christianity. And I needed to start kind of closing the doors and saying no to some things. And so it's just been lovely, again, here at these, to say on these verses today, that God is the builder of everything. Christ is faithful as a son over God's house, and we are his house if we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. He said no to evil, and it was about knowing that this house that I wanted to be in charge of actually is his house.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Sam. Well, I mean, it's so wonderful to hear, isn't it, the Lord's amazing grace, isn't it, in Sam's life and in all of our lives. You know, Jesus is our Lord and Saviour.